Hello.
And welcome to Story Power.
We're your hosts. I'm Patrick McAndrew.
And I'm Karen Fogg.
And we're podcasting from Oak Park, Illinois, which is in the western suburbs of Chicago.
And we're here to talk about stories that changed our world. We're kind of in the story business, wouldn't you say, Patrick?
I would say, as we're both fifth grade teachers, and storytelling has been a huge part of our teaching style, and the way that we kind of bring the curriculum to life. We tell stories. We decided that with this first podcast, and just keep in mind that we've never done this before, so this is new for us.
Wait, and true story, we actually started this about maybe 45 minutes ago, where we realized that we had the microphone on mute, and we had a beautiful start.
So this is our second run through with the same material. So we'll see how it goes. We just want you to know that we're we said we this is our first podcast ever. We're not very tech savvy. We're sort of tech savvy. We're kind of working through it. So please bear with us in terms of anything that may come up in terms of tech issues. So Karen and I had talked about what this podcast is going to look like, and we've already kind of plotted out some of the episodes for the future. But we wanted to start this episode, our first Story Power episode, by telling our story.
This is our story, yes, and it's kind of funny because everybody has how they met somebody, and ours has kind of a unique one because we met at school, and we found out over the years that we had all these moments prior where we had some commonalities. Our lives were paralleled in some ways, and we're going to share a little bit about that because, when we tell the story, you can kind of look at it as, fatalistic. It was fate that we met, or you could look at it as it was just meant to be, some sort of universal, I don't know, cosmos, karma, I don't know, or just happy coincidence.
And it's funny because we often tell this when we're teaching. We will tell our students will always say, well, how long have you two known each other? Or, you seem like really good friends. How long have you had your friendship? And we'll start to tell how we met and how we found these different coincidences. And when we tell the kids these stories, they always have different responses, and they can be anything from, something religious, like, oh, God was, stepping in to bring you two together, or, karma, oh, it's, you were destined to meet. There was some sort of cosmic destiny. So we're just gonna tell you some of the stories about how we met. We are teachers at an elementary school in Oak Park. We both teach fifth grade, and I started here back in 1997, I think.
And I had started about maybe 5 years prior to that, and when Patrick came into my school, I happened to meet him in
the Teacher's
Lounge, actually, before school had started, right?
Yeah.
I think it was actually before kind of that.
Yeah, I think I was coming in to set up my classroom.
Right. And I was just being friendly and making him feel welcome and getting to know him. He was being hired as the self-contained special ed teacher for BD, ED, LD kids, and I was a fourth grade teacher at the time in a 3-4 combination class. We hit it off right away. Actually, it was kind of
Well, yeah, because I met her in the Teacher's Lounge, and you had said something like, "Oh, I heard you're into drama or theater," and I said, "Oh yeah, I really am." And I had been at a school in the city in Chicago working for CPS, Chicago Public Schools, and had started a drama program at the last school that I had been at. There had been no theater, and it was a special ed self-contained school, and I had started a small theater program at the school. So Karen had you must have heard something
from the principal.
From the principal, that I was into drama. So she instantly said, "Oh, we have a drama club here, and would you like to be one of our directors?" And so that was kind of the initial interaction that we had when we met. It was just, bumping into each other in the teacher's lounge.
Right, and I just thought he was very outgoing and he was funny, and it was, I thought, he'd be a really great addition to our school. And he was, because here we are so many years later, so many experiences later, and so many stories later.
So many
we'll go
stories
back to those
later.
Stories too. And I want to kind of add something about where this podcast is going to eventually go to, is that stories will constantly be woven throughout, but stories play an important role in our lives as teachers. I mean, we're talking about novels, or we're talking about short stories, or poems, or music. We use also film and plays. We both do the drama club here at
theater
high school.
And
so
just everything. Stories are kind of woven through our lives, and so in the future, our podcast is going to focus on kind of like a thematic storytelling. Maybe we'll look at a film that really
resonated with us.
In some way, or changed our life in some way, and we'll share about that and why it was important to us. Or we'll choose a book or a piece of theater that is relevant. Or we'll even share. Karen and I have traveled together, so maybe we'll even share stories of our travels and how those have impacted us as people and as individuals and as educators and as human beings.
Yeah. And children love stories. And we always find that when sometimes they think that I'm just getting off track when I tell a story. I know your students do too, but we're not. I mean, usually the stories tie into something that we're talking about, whether it's something topical, something moving, or just something funny. They bring everybody together. I think it's one of the things that my students, and I know Patrick's students do as well, they'll tell us how much they love the stories. And, it's one of the things that I think we're kind of known for too, is that we're very open about many things in our lives, and we do make ourselves available in that way, which I think is super important.
Yeah, and I know talking to kids that I had years ago as students, and as a matter of fact, even here at our school now, we have students that were in my classroom are now teachers in our building.
Amazing.
And we have a social worker that's starting, in a few months, and she was also a sixth grader in my classroom, and now she's going to be our, half-time social worker. So when they remember their time in our classroom as adults, as young adults, they will often say, "Oh, I remember you told that story about," and the stories really resonate with them and actually impact them in lots of ways. So Karen and I are going to talk about, we started working together, and then just through, casual daily conversations, we started to notice some commonalities and some experiences that were part of our past.
Wait, and the first one I think that we found out was that where we had taught before. So prior to, so my teaching experience started in Chicago. I taught on the West Side. Then I moved to LA and I taught a couple of years in South Central Los Angeles. Came back to the Chicago area, which is home, and was teaching on the North Side of Chicago before I ended up in Oak Park. And Patrick and I, in talking about, as you would, what your past teaching experience was, we discovered that school that I was teaching at on the north side of Chicago,
basically in Rogers Park.
In Rogers Park.
Like West Rogers.
Clinton Elementary School. I was teaching fifth grade there, and
I was teaching at the Jewish Children's Bureau's Therapeutic Day School, working for the CPS system, but placed at a private therapeutic day school. And it was located
across the street from Clinton.
So actually for 7 years, I was teaching at this special ed school. I know Karen was only there a year at Clinton, but I was literally right across the street teaching, fourth, fifth, sixth graders, special ed students, and would often take my kids on walking trips, and we would walk right past Clinton School, because it was literally, if we came out our front door and headed, north down the street, we would be walking on the opposite side of Clinton School. And
Yeah, and you would see our playground, of course. I mean, where we, that open area, and probably saw me at recess. Who knows?
So probably Karen was out with her class, and there I was marching down the street with my, my 7 special needs kids going to a park or something. Or
Patrick probably cut me off in traffic, maybe as I was trying to in his speedy ways with loud music playing. I don't know. It was just kind of funny. So that was number one.
That was probably the first time that we found out, oh, that's so cool that we had this close call of knowing each other from simply working at schools that were across the street from one another. So that was experience number one.
Then we found out that when I didn't start off going to school to become a teacher. I was actually going to become a lawyer. So I majored in political science from University of Illinois, and then ended up kind of going on a cross-country excursion with a then boyfriend, and we went to California. And by the time I hit California, I said, I don't want to be a lawyer. I want to be a teacher. And so I decided to head back home and go back to school to get a degree in teaching, getting my teaching certificate. So I applied at Loyola University. Well, unbeknownst to me,
that is also where I attended university.
At the same time.
Yes.
At the same time.
I was working on my undergraduate in special ed and elementary ed from 83 to 87, 1983 to 1987. And so Karen and I were attending the same university. And because she was, I think you were a few years in the program, maybe
well, it was only
older
2 years
or younger.
No, I had. You were doing it as undergrad. I already had my undergrad degree. So I was going for that. There was 2 years that I was there. So we were probably about at the same time.
Yeah.
So it was funny because when we discovered that we were at Loyola at the same time, we were kind of laughing because we never had any classes together, although we knew some of the same teachers and that. But then it came to be that I was talking, and I can't even remember why. I can't even remember how it came up that Patrick started talking about a friend of his in school there, and just what he was saying. I just kept saying, "Well, what was her name?" When he was talking about it, he goes, "Well, why is that important?" And then when he said her first name, I go, "What was her last name?" And when he said that, I go, "Because I know her." And I knew her at the same time that he did, and even though our paths didn't cross, we had this common friend. She was kind of I would say my best friend at the school at that time. Mm-hmm. And we would do projects together. She'd even come to, my house. I would go to hers. But
the funniest part is that Karen, she had told Karen she had gone to, because she and I were really good friends. So I would say, yeah, sort of dating. Not really, because I was still kind of young.
Casual.
And I was very young, and I was very naive. And
perhaps immature,
maybe, I don't know, maybe just I like to use the word naive. I don't think I was immature. I just think I wasn't maybe even ready for kind of the a dating. I don't know, I was so involved in school. But anyway, we had gone to a wedding together, and Karen had heard the whole story about this wedding that we had gone to together, and
from her,
and then Karen's telling me about this. She used to talk about this guy. And
she was in love. She was so in love, and he had no clue that it was to that degree. I mean, it was kind of funny. He didn't know. I think in retrospect, I think you do. You can kind of see it, but in that time, I don't think you knew. I still never met you during that time period.
Right. So Karen and I didn't know each other, but she years later, she's telling me this story, and it turns out we have this connection with this other person, this young woman that I went to university with, that Karen was best friends with, and yet, she's hearing back then all about me. I know nothing about her, and then years later,
I didn't make the same impact, evidently. So it's okay. I don't take it personally.
Yeah, she was.
It's okay.
So that was the second interesting story. But then, just relating to the fact that we went to the same university, then every so often we would just start telling stories about how great it was to either, be downtown, because the Loyola School of Education is down in the, in the North Loop. It's kind of, right near Water Tower Place.
Wait, and I worked at Water Tower at the time, too, so I had a job over at Marshall Fields at the time when Marshall Fields was still there.
And I would always talk about, I used to love cutting class and going to the movies in Water Tower Place because Water Tower had a cinema. And
did you ever cut through the first floor?
How do you cut through the first?
No, did you ever walk through the first floor of Marshall Fields to get through?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, so of
then
course
you may have seen me.
Right. So you were working, and I was playing hooky and going to the movies.
At one of the fragrance counters. Maybe a spritz.
You probably spritzed me as I walked by. Excuse me, that was in my face. So one time we're talking about just experiences downtown and how much we loved going to school downtown.
And of course,
Chicago.
taking public transportation. So inevitably, when you take, and I've taken public transportation for many, many years, and there's always, and I actually have lots of transportation stories, but one that stuck out in my mind happens to be when I was in the subway and coming up, we had arrived at the destination at Chicago and State. Mm-hmm. And this particular train stop has an escalator, a single file escalator that goes up from the subway to the surface.
Street level,
yeah. And although you're still kind of enclosed in the station there. So when it happened to be at a time, I want to say it was winter because I think I had a heavy coat on too. And so I would have my backpack and my purse were kind of behind me. And I could feel...
Wait, so just to clarify, so I'm guessing you lived at home then. You didn't live on...
Yeah,
right.
No.
So we both went to Loyola at the same time, but we both lived at home because I lived in the northern burbs, so I could take a bus, and then I could take the Skokie Swift, and that would take me to Howard Street, then I take the Howard Street L downtown. Yeah. So you were doing the same thing from Oak Park.
Right.
So taking either the what is it, the Green Line down into the...
We just called it the Lake Street L. Yeah. And then I would take the subway sometimes in the winter. A lot of times I would just walk over, actually, because I enjoyed it. But this time I was taking the L, or the subway. So I'm on this, I'm going up the escalators, and I can feel like a little tugging, and I can sense that the zipper of my purse is being unzipped. So now we're still going up, and I grab my purse, and we're so tightly packed, I can't really turn around. So
it's rush hour. It's morning rush hour.
Yeah, so I'm pulling my purse up, and I re-zip it. Next thing I know, it's happening again before we've reached the surface. I mean, this guy was good and super fast. Or I was really slow at securing my purse the second time. And so anyway, because he had done it a second time, when we surfaced, I whipped around and I grabbed his lapel, and I'm shaking him and scolding him at the same time, telling him, don't you take, keep your hands to yourself, blah, blah, blah. And then I'm scolding him because he looks like he's about 18. And I'm, kind of telling him I don't ever want to see him doing this again. Well, in the meantime, some of his friends have come over, and they're like, oh, excuse me, miss, can we? And I just said, you know what? I know you're with him. I said, back off. I said, if police were here, I'd have, I was just like, sorry. So they just quickly.
She's being Karen.
Said, I am a Karen. Yeah, and so anyway, they're like, they're scattering, and I'm scolding him, and I'm just telling him, I don't ever want to see you doing this again. Okay, and I'm sure he learned his lesson, and life went on. But the funny thing was,
so she's telling this story one day, and it was as she's telling it, I'm like, wait a second. I said, I saw this happen. I was on the escalator going to school one day, and I saw this woman on the escalator confronting this guy that was clearly trying to steal her bag or go in her bag and steal from her bag. And I know it probably happens frequently, but the response of the woman that day when I was in university, and it's got to be 19, 20 years old, was so profound to me to see someone whirl around and confront this person so, angrily and dramatically that it stood out to me. So when Karen is telling the story that day and I'm listening to it, I'm like, I totally remember seeing this happen. It was an experience on the L, the Chicago, transit authorities, the transport system. I said it was so profound to me. It so stood out to me that it really stuck in my head. So then to hear this story years later and realize, oh my God, we could have.
I know that person.
we could have met that day as well, and we did not on that occasion either.
Yeah.
So it was like these were all different. events that took place in our lives where our paths were going to cross
Right.
and never did.
Right. And I think we even discovered even further on that we were at some concerts at the same time, which is not such a strange thing. That's more, But,
Yeah, what did we talk about? The Thompson Twins concert?
Yeah.
And they did the thing with the
Remember that.
giant parachutes or
Yeah.
balloons. They had giant balloons and stuff. Yeah,
That's
that
so
was
funny.
I think that was at Rosemont Horizon also.
Was it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Why? Was it University of Chicago, maybe?
I can't
U of I?
I think maybe.
U of I.
Maybe that's what I read.
Or,
I don't know what it was called.
yeah.
UIC Pavilion?
UIC Pavilion, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was it. Or no, even where the Bulls play. What's the...
That's United,
United Center.
I don't
But
know
was
if
it called the United Center back then?
No.
What's it called now?
United Center.
It was called something else back then, though.
Anyway, yeah, I don't know. But anyway, so we had a lot of like intersecting, paths. And, and here we are today. And we also discovered we have lots of other things in common that we enjoy doing together. And we will enjoy sharing those stories and many more with you on Story Power. So we hope
Yeah,
you'll
so
join
on
us.
future broadcasts, we hope you join us. We're going to tell more stories about our lives and how different stories have impacted our lives. So we hope to see you at our next podcast, and we hope you enjoyed our story about how we met and how our friendship eventually developed into, I consider Karen family. I mean, she's like
Patrick's family.
She's my sis. She's my sister.
We've traveled to so many places too, and that's another thing. So we've kind of learned. And when I say other places, we've traveled to India and Nepal and Tibet and Italy,
Europe and Italy.
Yeah. So anyway, so we have some good stories from many years of travels together and just our lives together. All right. So with that in mind, we would like to sign off, and we hope that you will join us again on Story Hour, and we hope that you will maybe start to share some of your stories too. We hope to find some ways to incorporate. Our goal too is to inspire our students to continue telling their stories. So, with that,
we will see you next time.